Hello, my name's Ivan Humble. I'm a former regional organiser and active member of the English Defence League. I was caught up in a world of hate for just over 5 years, which, because of my past and my lived experience, I believe gives me a valuable insight into some of the current issues we're facing today, and maybe a way forwards. It's a little bit about my background, normal childhood, living in a seaside town, which has its challenges in itself. Mum and Dad married for years until my dad died 8 years ago. The strange bit about my upbringing, I guess, was my mum and dad were foster parents. So we used to have a lot of kids coming in and out now and then to help people. I suppose back then that gave me an understanding and that my need inside me to help people, I guess. My dad was away a lot as well. He was a lot on the rigs as a welding inspector. Mum brought us up most of the time while he wasn't here. Mum suffered with agoraphobia as well. So my neighbour Joy, who's like on most cancer states, everybody's got an auntie or two. She used to take us out when Mum couldn't. So pretty much normal upbringing, really. So the reason I got involved in the EDL wasn't a choice, really. I made myself in a way. Like I said, in 2009, I had a genuine concern around Luton Homecoming Parade with the soldiers. That's probably my trigger point, because at the same time in 2009, I was working for Viking Family Support Group, which was a charity for the 1st Battalion Royal Anglians. And on the streets of Luton, that Freedom Parade was done by the 2nd Battalion. So some of the soldiers on that parade that day, I knew personally. Plus through the charity work, I'd met young lads of 18, 19, coming back from Afghan and Iraq with arms and legs missing. So when I see Adjunct Chowdhury, the radical Muslim back then, abusing our troops and some of his supporters spitting in the families' faces, I was offended by that. So quickly went online, searched who this Adjunct Chowdhury was. Kind of got lost in it with him a bit, because some of the things he was saying, I started looking deeper and deeper, to the point where I become quite knowledgeable on his interpretation of Islam. Because at the time as well, when I went to voice my opinion to the local town hall, I had a conversation, but I didn't feel I was listened to. I was there about 15, 20 minutes and I left. But I just, that feeling of not being listened to, or just not, or maybe make me feel as if my view is a bit wrong, led to some frustration. I then wrote a post online, just having a little rant, really, how you do you know what I mean? Just saying, I'm offended by this. Then I did touch on a little bit about my charity work I was doing, just to explain to people why I was offended. And then from that rant, somebody found me online, sent me a message. I engaged into a conversation with them, a bit naively looking back, but at the time, my other circumstances, my social life was social media, so it wasn't really strange for me to answer random people. But we got talking, and I found somebody that had listened to me and accepted that what I see was valid. And then towards the end of the conversation, this is I think the pivotal point for me was, at the end of the conversation, he offered me a solution, which was, in a couple of weeks, performing the English Defence League to stand up to people like Adjunct Chowdhury. That's me hook, line and sinker then, do you know what I mean? Because we're looking back now, I can see sort of little loopholes. When I went into that office at the town hall to speak to a councillor, they just listened to a point. They didn't offer me a solution. So if they, looking back, if they had said to me, I would send an email to this person or this person, maybe, I'm not saying it would have done, but a lot of my frustration and anger might have gone into an email, which it didn't, and then led me into a world of hate for 5 years. I suppose also part of the problem is when I formed my view is, I live in a town that's 99.9% white still. So when we were seeing Adjunct Chowdhury pushed on the TV, on the news, the documentaries, the newspapers, we never saw nobody challenging his rhetoric. So for me personally, I've become convinced that if he was the go-to Muslim, he must speak and represent the whole Muslim community, which is why I went from targeting kind of the extremists to stereotype all Muslims, because I thought they all thought the same as him. Sometimes you don't really get radicalized by anybody. You sometimes subconsciously brainwash yourself, which is kind of what I did in a way. Do you know what I mean? Because when I started doing my talks, everybody said, Tommy Roberts radicalized you. No, he didn't. I was radicalized by a Muslim guy. And that's what a lot of people have hard to accept, that is. They want that boogeyman. But there isn't a boogeyman. My boogeyman was a Muslim. The reason I spent probably 5 years in that world of hate is because of that lack of meaningful engagement with me and my beliefs. Nobody wanted to hear my side of the story, which then just pushed me deeper and deeper into echo chambers online, where I shared a space with people who reinforced my worldview, but not only that, some people had a more extreme view. So when you push people into echo chambers, it doesn't help them, it doesn't get better. You're seeing different rhetoric. The echo chambers are a place where admins are controlling the conversation, they're controlling everything that goes on. If somebody gives you a different worldview, delete and block, they're gone. So that kind of thing led me to staying in there so long. But then I had a sort of like a seed planted in my head early on. And around 2010, we'd done a demonstration in Peterborough where we went against some mosque for being sadly funded. And at that time, another thing that a lot of people don't talk about is when we went there, it was violent, there was a lot of aggression. It wasn't just us going there and causing that trouble, it was a reaction. So on a lot of the early EDL demos, there was another group that travelled called the MDL, the Muslim Defence League. Groups of about 18 and 24-year-old Muslim youth. They used to attend our demos where we were, kind of looking back to protect their community, but that's where the provocation was. It reinforced a lot of our views that if they're coming out against us, they must support the same view as charity did. So all this lack of engagement, not talking to anybody, it wasn't, so that when people got arrested that day as well, I come away from there thinking, well, that's normal EDL, demo, trouble, aggression, division. We went home, and it was a couple of weeks after that one of my friends in Peterborough sent me a newspaper article where they'd offered the EDL back for a cup of tea and a conversation. We didn't go to that because it didn't fit our agenda back then, I guess. But that was that seed planting in my head that why did everyone speak to us after all that division and everything we said? I couldn't sort of get my head around that. And because of my sense of belonging, that got parked at the back of my head like most things. And it weren't until about a year later, I had a chance meeting with a Muslim convert guy in Norwich. It was literally like just an off the spur of the moment thing to meet him. And he was busy at the time, so we agreed to meet the next day. And that's when I started a process of being able to have my voice heard. It wasn't by white people or anybody like it. It's by the Muslim community, the community I hated. They were the ones that were prepared to engage with me, which, if you look at the situation today, it's the same kind of thing. Nobody's engaged with nobody. We're all too busy arguing who's right and wrong. There's no middle ground. So because of that, meeting that first Muslim guy, a white convert, over 6 months we met and we talked. A lot of the things he was able to challenge me on was really good. But when I went to challenge him, this is where I got an idea that maybe my interpretation of Islam was different to his. Because everything I challenged him on, he didn't really understand it like I did. So that sort of thing, that sort of got me thinking more. And then one thing or another, I met another Muslim guy. This one was my perceived enemy, brown skin, big beard, a former jihadist as well. It was him that actually sat me down and was prepared to treat me as a human being, listen to me, acknowledge what I said, agreed in some places as well, which was a bit shocking really, to think that I spent all that time attacking our differences where maybe we did have some common ground somewhere. So I suppose it was a process with him over 2 years where I started challenging a lot of my views. Once I became friends with the white convert and the next one I met, things become harder for me to say some things and do some things, because I think once I had that friendship, maybe a little bit of guilt come across me. We did do something big in while I was in EDL, me and the Myanmar, the Muslim, the brown skin Muslim Myanmar, we did a march together after Lee Rigby was killed. So the EDL marched, or some members of my division, I think, about 30 of us, marched with Myanmar's, some of his community in Ipswich, which at that point was a positive. Two sides coming together on a bit of common ground. It was seen as quite a success. I got a lot of praise for it in the press and the media. Nobody wanted to come to me and say, why did I do it? Why did you walk with Muslims you hate, kind of thing? A lot of the negativity we got and the trouble was aimed at my Muslim friend, because I guess he went against some of their rhetoric by speaking to us. So it was about 10 weeks after that march that I walked away from the EDL. And I think it's just because of the friends I'd made. I noticed where a lot of my misconceptions come from. But at the same time, my misconceptions all throughout that period were justified because of Muslims like Ajahn Chowdhury and many other Muslims like him that post on social media. It's hard to not listen to them if everybody goes to them sort of people. Right, the motivation behind the march was purely a respect thing, because the day Lee Rigby was killed, murdered on the streets, I think it was the next day, both Kanil, the first Muslim I've met, and Manwar, the second one, both rang me up the day after and said, we're ever so sorry what happened to Lee Rigby. It was nothing to do with Islam in general. And I thought, well, they didn't have to ring me up and sort of say that to me, because I was in, my views are sort of, I could kind of understand that point then. It was because they did that I said to Manwar, we had a conversation, I said, look, you see what I mean? So I think this is just a matter of our trust listing, that phone call. And I said, if you're serious about what you're saying, would you be prepared to do something with us? Like, the EDL had planned lots of silent walks in the UK. I was tasked to sort out a few out. I went to Ipswich. I said, man, if I come to Ipswich, would you be prepared to walk with us? And to be fair, on the day, it was quite nerve-wracking, because it got to about 5 to 11, I think it was, and they still hadn't turned up. It was a Saturday as well, I think. So where we met was in the market as well, so there's lots of people watching us. And then all of a sudden, a little Muslim girl come around the corner in a headscarf with a big box of roses. That girl that day nearly single-handedly de-radicalised 30 EDL members, because she had a rose for each of us. And not one big tough bloke that was there could say anything bad. It was one of them days. It was really, 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 really positive. But the negatives overshot it again because of public hate crime again, I guess. That thing about you can't come together because you hate each other. Nobody's prepared. It's like I keep saying, over the last 6 years since I've been doing this, since I left EDL, a lot of my things, what I say, is based on my experience. And I'm just an ordinary lad from a council estate, do you know what I mean? So lots of my friends think the way I do. Even nowadays, they think different to me. It's not because they're racist or they're stupid or they're thick. It's because there's that lack, not maybe education, maybe knowledge, but that understanding, that respect, that engagement with the other, which is so important nowadays, I think. If we're going to see a change, we've got to come together properly.